Hello and welcome everyone to today's Transition Learning Community. This is our third convening together to explore how to better support youth and young adults of transition age within our community. And we're really excited that you were able to join us today. As we get started, it would be lovely for all of you to hear from each other and find out who else is here. So if you could go ahead and type your name and the community that you're from into the chat box and start to say hello, that would be great. My name is Johanna Bergen, and I am the Executive Director of Youth Move National, and we're a core partner in the TA centers that are hosting our call today. A gracious thank you to the Technical Assistance Network, or the TA Network, for bringing us together, as well as the Now is the Time Technical Assistance Center. As a reminder, this learning community is convening grantees from both the System of Care world as well as Healthy Transitions. As we get started today, we're going to be using a couple of different aspects of technology that the webinar platform allows us. So finding the chat box, thank you so much, Peter and Denise, for modeling that for us. We'll also be using a series of polls throughout today's webinar so that you can learn and hear from each other in that way. And we'll get started by finding out a little bit more about who we have on the call today. And so there will be 2 polling questions that come up for you, and please select the best fit answer to each question. The question on the top of your screen is asking about the organization that you work for and how it can best be described. And the polling question on the bottom is asking about your role. And again, pick the best fit. I know many of us wear multiple hats in this work. Great, thank you, and we can continue to introduce ourselves in the chat box. All right, and I'll give you just a few more seconds to find the best fit answer to both of these poll questions. This helps give our presenters an idea of who is joining us today. All right, so there's a strong showing from individuals who work at a state or local mental health agency, but we definitely show a variety of roles that we have within those agencies. So welcome, everyone. So today there will be 3 presenters, and I'm happy to be joined by Glen and Thomas on today's webinar. So again, my name is Johanna. I'm going to get us kicked off on today's webinar, and then later we're going to be hearing from Glen and Thomas. But I think it would be ideal if we could get to know everyone right from the beginning. Glen, could you take a moment to introduce yourself to the group?
I will, and I'm going to welcome everyone to the third convening of what I call TLC, the Transition Learning Community. Johanna and I are co-facilitators of the TLC. I work for the National Technical Assistance Center for Healthy Transitions, and am always pleased to work with you, Johanna. Just to repeat, we're here today because of everyone on the call is dedicated to improving the lives of youth and young adults by transferring services and systems which support them. We're going to be talking about technology today, and we're excited to have you all participating. We have a subject matter expert with us today, and Thomas, I'm going to let you introduce yourself.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Thomas Houston. I'm representing Medici Road here today. I'm the Center for Poverty Lead, and you'll get a chance to hear from me more a little bit later on this afternoon. But just a quick background, over 15 years in branding and marketing and communication expertise. And right now, working with each role, really looking at how do we look at communications on the front end to make sure that we're developing the right communications and having it ready to evaluate on the back end. So you can hear more about my expertise a little bit later this afternoon in our talk show.
Awesome. Glenn, thank you so much. Thomas, thank you so much. I'm really excited that you're able to join us today. So as Glenn says, we are here to talk about technology. We're going to be discussing engagement of young adults of transition age through technology. And really we're going to be talking about how we can utilize technology in engagement and actually why we really need to use technology in our engagement of young adults. Technology can be exciting and it can also be overwhelming. We're going to be talking about it in 3 ways today and hopefully in ways that leaves you excited rather than overwhelmed at the end of our session. We're going to be talking about how to use technology to gather youth voice and receive young adult input. Essentially, how can technology help us become more youth-guided and driven? Secondly, we're going to discuss the use of technology to engage and provide services and support. And we're specifically excited to hear from each of you during this portion of the discussion. The third area will be the use of technology in recruitment and outreach. So that's the plan for the day, and we can get started. Our agenda is on the screen here. I'll provide a quick overview of technology use by adults to frame the discussion up for us. Then we'll review the thought work and resources that were sent out to you as you registered for the webinar. And then we will transition to Thomas and Glen to make all of the things we're talking about practical for you. So before we spend time today talking about youth and young adults' use of technology, I'm curious about how each of you are using technology. And so we're going to pull up a series of yes or no questions about how you as an individual use technology in your daily life. And so pick yes or no as folks chime in their answers. You're going to see those results. The top left-hand corner, do you use an electronic health monitor like a Fitbit? On the upper right-hand corner, do you have a Facebook account? Yes or no. Bottom left-hand corner, do you have a Twitter account? And bottom right-hand corner, do you have an Instagram account? And again, I'll ask you about how your organization or grant uses social media later on, but this is how you personally use it. I'm realizing, to be fair, I should put in all my answers too, right? Okay, cool. So we have a variation of responses. So clearly some of us are using some types of technology, but not necessarily using other technology, which is really cool. Okay, I'm going to give you 30 seconds more, and then I'll talk a little bit about the results that we're seeing. Okay, cool. All right, so just like any population of using social media, there's a lot of variance that we see. I'm going to briefly talk a little bit about what we know from research of where youth and young adults are spending their time as compared to where those of us on today's call are spending our time. So we know that young adults are on social media. We know that the most popular platforms for young people right now are Facebook, Instagram, and Snapchat. I'm going to share a little bit of data on this slide and the next slide that are already 2 years old, and in technology time, that's fast. So we can use our best knowledge to know that online usage and social media usage seems to only be increasing from where we were a couple of years ago. So we know that Facebook is the most popular social media platform really across all ages. When we talk about young adults in their teen years, roughly 71% of young people have a Facebook profile. And we were showing a little bit of a higher response there of over 80% of us have Facebook accounts. A third of young people have Twitter accounts, so not as popular as Facebook, and we might keep that in mind as we talk about our grantee efforts for engagement later. And over 52% of youth and young adults have an Instagram account. I actually just asked you about the health monitor, the Jawbone, or if you have an Apple Watch, to get you thinking about the way that we use technology off of our cell phones. Technology is really invading all parts of our lives. So if you have one of those handy things on your wrist right now, remember to think about that as technology. Okay, so why technology, right? Because we're using it every day. I commonly work with communities, and something that comes up is the fact that not everyone has access to the internet, to a smartphone. And while that is true, and we need to know our community and the resources that are within our community, what research is telling us is that most people do find a way to have access to technology. So we know that 94% of teens report using a screen, whether it's a mobile device, a tablet, or a computer, every single day. And that is a really big percentage number. So that is daily usage. We know that 88% of youth have or have access to a mobile device, whether that is their personal device or a shared device. Again, a really high number have access to mobile devices. And 87% of youth have or have access to a desktop or laptop computers. This takes into consideration access at public libraries, access through the school day, as well as something that you might have in your home. And what those numbers show us is that when we think about outreach and engagement of young people, we need to not assume that they're looking at the content we create on a desktop computer like you or I might be doing today. We know that, and again, this is data that is already getting a little bit dated, we know that 46% of the screen time is on handheld devices. So that includes mobile phones and tablets. And that 71% of youth are using more than one social media platform. So that means we're multitasking on our handheld devices, and we need to keep that in mind as we think about how we're reaching out to young adults. I think one thing that has become apparent in my personal interaction with young people within the Youth Move Network, as well as through my efforts working with you as grantees, that sometimes we equate having a cell phone number with having internet access, and we know that young people experience a high level of transition of cell phone numbers, but there are so many ways for us to access internet that even though we may be disconnected from you from a text message or a phone, we may still be using that mobile smartphone to access internet in some way. So young people want access to the internet, and we can clearly see that they are using it. We know that technology is a great way to reach young people because it can be rapidly updated. You can access content quickly. It's available at your fingertips. And more we're seeing youth and young adults ask for information that they can find online or on their smartphone. It doesn't mean it's the only way we communicate. It just means that it is a valuable part of our outreach strategies. And then I really want to, I don't think I can drive home this point enough. It is important to note that specific genders, cultures, ages, and incomes affects our technology use and our access to technology and our screen time per day. There's some really good research that's broken out with some demographics that you can look at, but really you can look into your own community and ask people how they're accessing and what they want to access online. And you want to make sure that youth and families within your community are driving your engagement strategies on technology, so you don't miss a key cultural consideration as you're using technology. Okay, so hopefully you're in agreement that we should be talking about technology today. The first way we're talking about how to use technology is to gather young adult voice. So both Healthy Transitions and System of Care are built on the foundation of youth voice, and that young adult involvement should be a part of everything that we do. And we know that youth voice is so important because young people will change our institutional culture and practice when they are at the table. We know that young people contributing to our systems design, our policy design, and our service array means that we implement policies that are better and more effective at meeting the needs of young adults. The participation of young people within our systems design builds their own self-awareness and understanding and builds a sense of self-efficacy that is so important for young people. We know that young people giving to their community and our community engaging with young people strengthens the relationships we have and the sense of community. And we know that young people coming to the table and participating and sharing their experiences with us improves individual and organizational outcomes. So if we know that we want youth voice at the table and to be a part of our work, how might we do that? Using technology. So on the screen are three examples of a myriad of examples where technology can help you get youth voice or input. Text Talk Act, if you're not familiar, is a national dialogue to talk about the importance of taking care of your mental health and how to help a friend in need. It's fun, creative, interactive. You get together with 3 or 4 people, one of you has a cell phone, and you text in to start the conversation. Your small group is then guided through an in-person discussion by prompts that come via text message. The experience lasts about an hour and includes short videos, discussion questions, multiple choice questions, and resources. It's available to start at any time. You text START to 89800 to get started. And it is something that we've facilitated at Youth Move in small groups as well as conference events. And it gets us talking about having healthy conversations about mental health with each other. A Twitter chat is a live conversation that happens on Twitter. So you have to have a Twitter account. You follow a hashtag and you reply to the questions that a host organization puts out. You can they usually last, usually an hour. They're time limited, but then there is a history of that conversation you can go back to. You can join a Twitter chat to learn for yourself, to advocate for a position, or to convene a group discussion. In the chat box, I'm putting in an example of a link to a compiled Twitter chat that Youth Move hosted last year. So you can see an example of some of the content that can come out in a Twitter chat. And then the concept of focus groups can be transferred into the virtual environment. We're frequently convening young adults from across the Youth Move chapters in this way. A meeting platform like Zoom or GoToMeeting where we can use webcams as well as a telephone conference line are ideal. And just like we would convene a focus group in our community where everyone's in the same room, we can do that with young people who are across a great geographic distance. Does anybody have questions about any of the options on the screen here or other opportunities to convene young people virtually? You can go ahead and totally chat in questions at any time throughout today's conversation. And again, these are just some quick examples for you to take home and utilize if they're helpful. I'll give folks a minute as they're typing in questions. Okay, Peter. Okay, so that's a good question. How does the virtual focus group differ from a chat room? I think that when Youth Move hosts a virtual focus group, we're very intentional about using it as a set opportunity at a certain time with a certain topic, and we really have like a plan and an end result. And it would be, we always facilitate, peer facilitate our focus groups. So young adults with lived experience are there on the phone with young people who are contributing. I think a chat room, I think you could usually host a focus group style within a chat room, but I would also think about a chat room as being like a more ongoing place for engagement that people might come back into over the course of time. And there are some really good examples of online spaces where young people can go into a Facebook group or to an organization like reachout.org where they can have a chat room where it really is a peer relationship. And that would definitely be a way that young people utilize technology. We could think a little bit creatively, I think, about how we could use that type of environment to really specifically hear from young people about a certain issue. I hope that makes sense. Okay, cool. So we're going to transition into talking about how we use technology in engagement and provision of services and supports for young adults. And here I'm going to hope that you remembered your thought work. So to get us started, I have a question about the TED Talk links we provided on the crisis text line. And so while you were watching the TED Talks, what new ideas did you have for using technology? And as you type your answers into this box, the rest of the group will be able to see your responses. So for those of you, just as a quick refresher, we are providing thought work for multiple reasons. And we know that not everyone has an opportunity to review it beforehand. So there were 2 TED Talk links provided. They were about the starting of the organization crisis text line and then the data that is being collected from crisis text line, and both were delivered by their founder, Nancy Lublin. For those of you that were attendees at the USF Research Conference in Tampa this past March, you may have had the opportunity to hear Nancy Lublin in person as she provided one of the keynotes of that conference. And so if you have seen these videos or heard of the crisis text line, how have they helped you be inspired to use technology in a different way? And then if you're just joining us, I'm going to talk a little bit as I give you a chance to put in some responses. If you're just joining us for the first time in the Transitions Learning community, or you registered in just the past couple of days, and you're seeing these resources for the first time, don't worry, no fear. We still encourage you to join in this and the following discussion. The resources and discussion questions are provided for 3 purposes. One is to help stimulate your thinking for today's webinar so we can have a discussion when we're here together. The second is to expose you to new materials and resources. And the third is to really give you a framework and a set of discussion questions to take back to your grantee team. So like we have a conversation today, we would envision you having a similar conversation in your home community. All right. Okay, perfect. We figured out how to use this tool. This is great. I haven't used one of these before. So, someone has responded that they are partnering with Crisis Text Line to get a keyword for our county or state, which is a new component to Crisis Text Line that I'm actually just learning about as well. But the idea that you can text in to start a conversation at Crisis Text Line at any time. And if this is the first time you're hearing Crisis Text Line, it's like the 1-800 number that you would call for crisis support in your community, except you activate it via text message. It's designed specifically for young adults who show a preference, a marked preference in texting with someone for support rather than talking to them on the phone. And there's an opportunity to work with Crisis Text Line for there to be a certain key start code. So I live in Iowa. You could text in Iowa to get help rather than just the generic start or home that they use. And there are some advantages in the data collection and the curation of resources behind that keyword focus. All right, someone else is saying that we can use data to influence people at the state level to make needed changes. That is so key. gets me excited to think about the idea of what a SurveyMonkey link connected to a list of cell phone numbers can do in terms of getting us an easy opportunity for young people to pitch in their ideas and their experiences. Something we've done at Youth Move National, that in addition to the suicide prevention line, which we've always been a strong supporter of and provided resource and connection to, we now use the crisis text line as one of our key crisis promotion interventions that we offer. So we rarely are developing meeting or convening opportunities with young people that don't also include a link to the crisis text line. Other new ideas that you might have for using technology in your work? I can see folks typing a little bit, so I'll give you just a moment.
Yeah, Hannah, it's Glen, and I really like that idea of the crisis text line providing data because we know in terms of sustainability and replication that it's very important to use data to inform our stories.
Yes, definitely. And Gwen, that reminds me, so if you go to crisis, just Google crisis text line, there is a whole page dedicated to data. An example of what you can do there is look at the sort of aggregate information of all the text messages that are coming in and what the content of those requests for support are about. And so you can look at what time of day are young people more often to be reaching out for support around alcohol use as opposed to reaching out for support around an eating disorder. And that data, I think, is challenging to look at, honestly, and also really helpful to remind and show us how much need there is out there and why our work is so important. I also find it very inspiring that young people are reaching out for support and that this is showing us. Oh, perfect. Lee, thank you for pointing out an innovative use of technology in terms of how we can better get links out to registered participants. So duly noted. Totally. Okay, and so here's another idea after thinking about using crisis text line data. Would like to use local data about who is texting and what their concerns, issues are as a way to inform our local outreach and education efforts. And I think that's great. So when you go on to crisis text line, you're going to see the data for young people all across the country. The keyword capability, if you partner with crisis text line, offers you to look at that a little bit deeper. And there's also some very innovative research partnerships happening with crisis text line that are looking at more specific questions and how we can better support young adults by looking at this data. So it's a really exciting opportunity. I think we're just at the start of it. Okay, cool. All right, so Gary, can we go ahead and close this poll and we'll go on to our next discussion questions? Okay, so at the end of the slide deck, and I'll go ahead and get you guys a link for this as well, we have shared a resource that is a paper that was developed by NASHVID relatively recently that I had the utmost honor to contribute some thoughts to, and I'm really glad that folks are finding it useful. And it is a paper called Promoting Young Adult Mental Health Through Electronic and Mobile Technologies. I apologize for the very long name. And so some of you, I think, have had a chance to look at that. This is really a document that looks at what is currently happening in the service provision world. So how are young adults using technology to support their mental health recovery, and how are their providers using technology within their services and supports. And if I could summarize the statement of the paper, I would say it is a new frontier, meaning there is a whole lot of potential identified, and there are the starts of some really good research into this area, but we don't have a lot of answers. I think that the state leadership that we talk to and providers that we talk to are really excited and want to utilize technology more, and are really hungry for information about it. So that paper is definitely available for you guys as you think about some questions that you may need to be asking yourself as you start to infuse more technology, or if you're supporting service providers in infusing technology. And also know that there's a lot of questions out there and hopefully really good work to be done. So knowing that we're in a learning space everywhere about this, I am wondering if you'd be comfortable sharing about how your grantee community is currently using technology to engage young adults in services now, so that we could learn from each other on today's call. And so, yeah, very open for folks to chat a little bit into the chat box about what you're currently doing. So I know one thing. Yep, yeah, go ahead, Glen.
Well, we have two people who are about to share with us, so that's great. Thank you very much for doing that.
One topic, Glen, I know you and I have worked a lot with communities on is just setting up the ability to text back and forth with young people. So starting with, I don't know if I would remember to put my socks on in the morning if I didn't get a text message reminder, right? So that one-way text message communication, I think lots of folks are interested in activating, and then working through and navigating how do we set up text messages that go two ways. So a young person could text back either about scheduling a therapy appointment or setting up a time to talk to a service provider, or even being able to communicate back and forth.
Absolutely. Johanna, this week I've been getting text messages from my dentist confirming my dental appointment, and I am to text yes back. And so that's helpful for very busy people. Okay.
Great. Okay, Peter, thank you. Yeah, so Facebook Live, that's super exciting. So Facebook Live is when you're on your Facebook profile and someone in real time is using their phone or a camera to say, hey, this is what I'm doing, and it's live and in the moment. So I love that you're using that to display activities and events, really a thing we can look at, a tool we can use to extend our reach of events. Lots of folks chiming in about the preference for text messages. I'm always intrigued when we hear that interest in text message. Are we able to document response rates or times when we text versus make phone calls? Are we able to document young people's preference for text messaging as a form of communication so that we can show and leverage that desire to change the way we're engaging? Okay, great. GroupMe being mentioned here, which is great. So a lot of times we'll see folks, once you start messaging with young people as a group, that you actually move off of your phone texting platform to a platform like GroupMe or WhatsApp. And those are ideal. You can message with an internet connection rather than using your cell phone data plan, and it makes the group conversation so much more seamless. Using text messages or GroupMes as reminders we've seen really great innovations with grantees using Facebook Messenger or text messages as a way to stay in touch with young people who are part of your longer-term evaluation. So when you're trying to engage with a young person to get a 3-month and a 6-month post-service check-in, using something like this can be more helpful in maintaining engagement. Totally. Snapchat being used instead of text messaging. Yes. Oh, can I use your definition of Snapchat? So Snapchat, if you guys haven't used it, it's an app that is temporary, and we're seeing an increased interest in using these temporary message apps, and actually temporary messages are being built into other platforms as well, so we can send a quick picture or a video, and the other individual can see it for just a matter of seconds. Okay, cool. Thomas, I don't know if you can weave this into your presentation a little bit later, but I'm excited that folks are talking back and forth about how to use Snapchat as an organization versus as an individual.
I was already thinking about that.
Okay, all right, perfect. As an individual, I love Snapchat because I can show so much more excitement and emotion and be really in the moment when I send someone a snap. And in comparison, text messages sounds very boring and sort of rote. We have Youth Move has a Snapchat that we've been talking about, but Lee, I think I'm in the same boat as you, so this is great.
And
okay,
Lee typed a question for Dashiell about how they support the Snapchat.
Yes. Okay, perfect. So Snapchat as well as Facebook and Instagram, promotion across those, that's great. Kay, thank you for bringing up that that not everyone uses social media and maybe doesn't use social media for their mental health or their participation in youth group. And so a GroupMe or a platform like that provides them a space to do that. I think that I have experienced that as well. Okay, perfect. Dashiell, thank you for talking about integration. There are some resources. Glenn, I think you're going to bring them up later and we can make sure links get in. If you're interested particularly in managing the social media aspect of this, there are some tools we can get you connected to around those specific questions.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think that for those of you guys have really great questions and ideas, you know, at the end of the day, coming back to the young people you work with and asking them what works for them, right? So when we convene like a new work group to work on a new topic, one of the things we do along setting up our group norms and identifying how we want to work with each other, we spend some time identifying how we want to communicate with each other. And we can ask questions like, is it valuable to have a video option in how we communicate? Or are we primarily going to be sending text messages? Do we need a platform that would allow us to share links or pictures or PDFs with each other? And based on those answers, we can decide what form of platform that group could choose to best stay in communication with each other. Okay, perfect. I'm loving the questions that are playing out there. I would just offer an invitation if you have some challenges that you're facing in utilizing technology in your engagement or in service provision, go ahead and type them in. We've got folks with a wealth of knowledge on the phone and community members from across the country who are doing this work.
Johanna, I would also indicate you had mentioned that maybe we have some people on the phone who haven't been a part previously of our transition learning community, and we tried to get the homework discussion questions out early for this call, but as a group that I was a project director, and you have advisory committees, and you have youth councils, and I think you can use these questions, even if you haven't had an opportunity to discuss with your communities, as the basis for some conversations as you move forward.
Yeah, thank you, Gwen, definitely. So we are trying to cover a lot in today's session, so we're going to start transitioning into our next conversation, which is how we use technology in recruitment and outreach with youth and young adults. And as we transition into this portion of the discussion, I invite each of you to share your grantee or your organization's online presence in the chat box. So help us find you on social media via Twitter or Instagram or a website. If you share those links and handles in the chat box, then we can share and support your content and your work outside of the learning community. And so I'll put in Youth Move Nationals as an example. So we try to be lots of places, including having a website. So as we transition into this next conversation, go ahead and take a few minutes to tell the folks in the room where you are online. And then I have another polling question for everybody to help us transition into this new concept. And so the question on the screen now is, research shows that infographics are shared blank more times than other documents on social media. So how many more frequently or less frequently are infographics shared as compared to other types of documents on social media? And so I'm going to give you a couple of moments to put your responses in here, and it will be my great pleasure to hand this over to Thomas Houston, who's going to share not only the introduction to the Transitions Talk Show, but also hopefully the correct answer to this polling question.
It looks like everybody's probably voted, and surprisingly, 2/3 of the people picked an answer that I would have picked, which is 3 times as much as other documents. And I was surprised by that answer, to be perfectly honest, because if you think about it, typically we're used to dealing with lots of data, lots of insight. Well, the way society works, and as we talked about earlier, most of our youth are on cell phones. They're using multiple pieces of equipment at the same time. And so for them, it's about instantaneous as well as visual. And so the idea of an infographic giving both information and a visual data instantaneously, that's what's mostly shared. And so we're going to talk a lot today about the use of visual, instantaneous, and not just in social media, but what does that look like overall in terms of adding value. And so that's what I want to spend some time talking about. So everybody, I'm Thomas Houston. Welcome back. We are here, really excited to do this Transitions Talk Show. Again, I am here with Medici Rose, and I am the subject matter expert on communication. I am joined by Glen from the Healthy Transitions TA Center. And you also have heard most of this time about Johanna, and she's going to join us and help us run the actual chat box. You should be able to see Gwen on your computers by now. Wave hi, Gwen. And Johanna's going to actually be fielding any questions. So this is going to be a real live talk show. So please be involved, ask questions as they come up, and we're just going to have some fun for a couple of minutes.
Thank you, Thomas. And Gary, I think we're going to show a slide first. There it is. And if you'll all be patient with us for a minute, I think it's going to cover up our pictures. There we go. Well, thank you for the introduction. There now we're covering up both Thomas and Gwen, but you can see us in this picture. And thank you, Johanna, for covering all of that. I am very amazed at what you all are doing out there with social media and the ways you're using it for outreach and engagement, because we know that young adults are a population for which engagement is so important. Many of them have trust issues because they are system wary and system weary. So using methods that they feel safe using and are attractive to them is really important. Thomas and I were privileged to work together recently with You Forward, which is a healthy transition grant located north of Boston. And we were there for a site visit. You Forward were going to be our guests and our peer learning guests today, but they're participating in a statewide peer-to-peer event today for May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and they're very disappointed not to be there. They do, however, know that we're talking about them and have talked with us about this. Thomas, I think you reminded me when we were preparing for this that it's important to point out to all of you that You Forward does not have dedicated staff. They don't have dedicated communication directors or dedicated staff to this. They do have a dedicated budget, and wanted to talk with Thomas in a face-to-face manner about how to maximize their resources, both time-wise and financially. Thomas, you want to talk about what impressed you with
Sure.
You Forward? And
Yeah,
I just want to say, at the bottom of your screen, you'll see a picture of the group that was working with Thomas and myself. The day this picture was taken, we had matched our outfits. We neglected to do that today.
We didn't manage to do that today, though, Gwen. We should have coordinated a little bit better.
Yeah.
Well, for me, I would say the thing that impressed me the most is how eager they were. And we had a couple pre-planning calls as well as when we got there. And I was really excited that they wanted to cover so much material in 2 days, but it made me a little bit nervous. But the thing that really impressed me is how adaptable they were once we got there. And we were able to say, all right, we want to tackle 20 different things, but let's really focus in on exactly what are the key items you want to walk away with after these 2 days. And on top of that, they were able to recognize that, I might not have the expertise from a social marketing standpoint, but didn't mind rolling up the sleeves and realize it was about having fun and being engaging. And so that whole idea about engaging youth where they were, I don't hear that often. I hear it, but almost like people say that as a must do versus a want to. And I thought they really wanted to be able to engage on the level they were in. So we were actually able to kind of focus in, based off that conversation, on 3 key things. That was really about this whole idea around the website. What does it mean? And not just about having one. The second thing we really had a chance to talk through was storytelling. So how do we use storytelling not just in the essence of social marketing, but what does that really mean about getting our message across? And then the third thing was around program design. And so really looking at this thing we called the 4 Ps and 1 C, and then what does that look like around ideation? And really be able to use those 3 things to refocus, as you would say, about how the work that they do actually impact the people in their community.
So, Thomas, tell us what the 4 Ps and the C are.
But everybody doesn't know what a 4 P and a C is?
I didn't before we were in Massachusetts, that's for sure.
It's funny because I often talk about how social marketing and corporate marketing aren't that different. We always look on a social side that talks about how people make decisions on what they do with their life, whether it's talking about mental health, drug abuse, coexisting. There's a path around how they make their decisions about whether they're going to get better. Well, consumers make the same decisions around whether they're going to buy something, whether they're going to move somewhere, how they're going to spend their money. And so we talk about, as we create programs, events, messaging, there's really 4 key things that we want to focus on. Number 1 is the P, which is the product. What exactly are we talking about? Is it a message around getting help? Is it a message around where to come? Is it the fact that we actually have a drop-in center? So what's our product? The second one is promotion. How are we telling people about what we're doing? And we talk a lot about social media, which is a big one. So what other methods of communication are we using to promote our event? The third one is price. That becomes very important when we think about where people live, what kinds of resources do they have. So when we start executing, are the things that we're executing, are they free? Is there a cost attached to them? And so price becomes very important. And the fourth one, I don't know why we call it it's a P. It's really distribution, or how we get our information out. We typically say place. And so not only where are we having our events or our communications local, we're going to the community, but also how do we disseminate information for that distribution channel as well as where things are taking place. Those are the 4 Ps. The one that I'm always intrigued about, and we were able to dig into it a lot in Massachusetts, was the C for competition. And so people often get nervous when you hear competition, but it's really not a bad type of competition. People are limited in their resources, whether you're talking about money, time, people, and so there's always competition for the same resources. And so you have to think through who's your competition. Is an event going on the same day as a big breast cancer walk? Well, you probably don't want to have your event on that day. If somebody else talking to the same consumers, well, you may not want to talk to them the same exact way. And so those just understanding who your competition for resources, those are the 4 key things. So the 4 Ps, product, price, promotion, and place, and then that C, which is competition, I think we really want to make sure we understand when we're talking about how to serve our youth.
Thomas, you and I talked a lot about the fact that those 4 Ps and the C, the young adults who we were working with just grabbed onto that. And in the 2 days we were there, it was up all over the room and on different newsprint papers, and they kept coming back to that. Johanna talked about engagement through technology, and these were recipients of service, and they were really being engaged through knowledge of technology and knowledge of what social marketing can be and is, and really grasped onto the concepts. And they knew right away about the competition on their time as young adults and on the way they like to get their information. We've listed so many things as we were all talking earlier with Johanna, and of the different methods of outreach through technology, and how Snapchat is competitive in a positive way over Facebook or other means. So thank you for typing those in there, Johanna. I'm going to remind people that this is a talk show, so if you want to type in anything, please do. And we do have a dedicated 25 minutes after we talk more formally to discussion around that. So any questions or about the 4 Ps and the C? I'm going to say use it with your you people who you are working with around outreach planning and thinking. Thomas and I discussed that I would talk a little bit about how Massachusetts used the young adult voice in everything, and Johanna highlighted that as a critical area when earlier in our time together. She also talked about how specific groups and cultures use different aspects differently in age population, and it's important to know that. So the U Forward staff, the project director and youth coordinator, were participating in this fall in a networking group around young adults experiencing homelessness. And as a part of that group were young adults who had experienced homelessness, were currently experiencing homelessness, or at risk of homelessness. And they listened to those young adults. Those young adults said, as part of this group, that having access to a computer at a library, at different places they could find it publicly, and being able to be on websites and Facebook, and were very, very critical to them. And it was a wake-up call for Youth Forward. They said, we've had a website, but it's probably not been updated for a long time. It probably isn't as helpful as it should be to reaching out to and engaging those young adults in our communities, particularly those in vulnerable populations. So I liked, as you all were going through the different things you use, Snapchat and texting, and what you've discovered about it. A discovery that Youth Forward made was that their website was probably pretty critical to their outreach to certain populations. Any thoughts in addition to that, Thomas, at this point? Or should I just keep blabbing?
I would say, I look like Lee had a question, wanted to make sure we gave him some time.
Go ahead, why don't you answer that?
So I was going to say, Lee, I really wanted to take a look at it from a standpoint of, think about when we negotiate on a job. Well, if you're in government, there's no negotiation, but if you've ever been on the private side, you can negotiate not only on salary, but also benefits. And so, yes, we have seen where compensation does work, but part of everything we're talking about messaging, you're still having a messaging conversation with them when you start talking about compensation. So I would take a look at what type of compensation do they want. Is they looking for access to something? Are they looking for actual money? Are they looking for a place to stay? Or do they need help finding a job? So yes, the answer is compensation, but I wouldn't make this something that solely means money.
And Lee, that is a perfect segue to my next example of using young adult voice. What the Youth Forward staff did was decide they would like to work with a social marketing committee, young adults. They made it an application process. They marketed to young adult recipients of service what they were looking for, and had the young adults fill out applications. And from that, they selected 3 young adults to be their social marketing committee. And that social marketing committee does get paid a small stipend monthly. And they were paid, in addition to that, a stipend for the time they spent with Thomas and I, the end of March. So there was compensation there. They also invested in other ways in the recipients of service on the committee. They gave them the tools they needed. They didn't just say, you're a young adult, you know about social marketing, come help us with social marketing. They designed a site visit, 2 days, with a subject matter expert to give them the tools that they had requested and needed. The hours of our visit were very much met their needs. They did a competitive process, and I think most of you know healthy transition goes up to age 25. But they were able to, we did the site visits starting in the late afternoon because all of the young adults on the committee are in school. They have a young adult advisory committee that then these 3 individuals take information back to and ask for information about what will work for them. I did tell you that there's no dedicated social marketer on the staff, but the youth coordinator works with the social marketing committee and with the youth advisory committee, and he's sort of the communication. He isn't sort of, he is the communication pathway. So there was a lot of, I would say a lot of compensation to these young adults for their expertise. And as Thomas said, it wasn't all monetary. And we saw them then present at the Youth Advisory Committee, so there was also some status involved. There is some status involved with what they're doing. We were going to talk a little bit about issues. Oh, did you go away, Thomas? I went away.
Oh, I'm still here.
Oh, well, my computer just froze.
You might be frozen. Yeah. Well, I can still hear you.
Okay, that's good. So we wanted to talk a little bit about issues for replication, things you all could be thinking about, and please do think about this. The Social Marketing Committee did not cost, in the range of grant funding, didn't cost a lot. It cost the minimum amount for the stipends, and it costs staff time because they're very invested in these young adults and are investing in it. An understanding of effective management of time and capacity for outreach associated with social media is really important, and I think that's an important thing that Thomas, you brought to this as we went in. They wanted to do everything, and Thomas just kept saying, and who's going to do it, and what's the time investment. Do you want to talk a little more to that, Thomas?
Sure. We actually ended up doing an exercise. If I can go back, we talked about having these 20 great things, and they were all great things to do. And so what we did was really just map out a calendar of an average week. And we let typically that change a bit, like what are your standard meeting times? Do you have a one-on-one with your coordinator? Are there something typically comes up once a month? Just kind of map out what that calendar looks like. And we had already done an exercise where we literally wrote down the different things that they wanted to do. And then after we had that calendar, just had to go back and fill in where all those 20 items fit. And they didn't all fit. And so we had to make some hard decisions about, based on actual time allocations, what do we actually want to do? And so it's just an exercise I would recommend that everybody does, because until you actually start executing, everything sounds like a great idea until you realize there's just not enough time and people to actually execute that.
And that was, I think, an issue for replication is be aware of that. What is your capacity? And the other thing they spent time on is if you're working with a committee or even just within your staff, everyone needs to understand what their role is in an outreach plan. Where does it fit into my job description? What is my role as a member of the committee as opposed to the youth coordinator? The other thing is, and Thomas spoke a little bit to this, the Social Marketing Committee was introduced to safe and effective storytelling. And Thomas, I was impressed that you were a great model around that.
Sure. And so for us, it was really, we spent literally, I would say, about an hour, hour and a half around storytelling. And the reason we did that was to talk about authenticity. And so you want to be able to feel, you want the youth to feel like you're being authentic. And so we talked through not only with the adults, but also the youth advocates as well around what does storytelling look like, so the process behind storytelling. And so that way they didn't believe that I was just making this stuff up. I gave them an actual story about how I got to where I am. And so, number one, I feel like it made them feel to be able to look at me like, oh, he actually knows what he's talking about, not just from a marketing standpoint, but from a life standpoint as well. And we were able to then say, to show, all right, now you have some version of a similar story. How can you make people believe in you and then turn that into something you will put out in a marketing messaging or in some type of social media without using your name, without using your actual story. And we'll get to a little bit later around curation or developing content, but we just spent a lot of time talking about storytelling development and being able to, how do you want to tell a story to get your message across?
And another thing that I think was important to, that as you're thinking of issues for replication, is when we were talking about time burden. They were very aware from having had their experience with some of the young adults on the committee they were working on, that it's important to continually update your messages and your website and your Facebook page or whatever you may be using. And actually, the project director just told me this week that she took a deep breath, and one member of the Social Marketing Committee, a young adult recipient of service, is handling their website. And Thomas, you had some thoughts on pros and cons for that. It's a very efficient way to use those that you're...
Absolutely. And Gwen, while I'm doing this, you might be able to restart your webcam now.
I'm doing that as we speak.
So obviously the big pro is you have a person that's supposed to be looking at the website, making the website. And so from a mindset standpoint, they're going to know what should be on there, what shouldn't be on there, at least from a starting the conversation standpoint. So that's the biggest pro. I would say, and I don't really use the word con, but I would say maybe one watch out for would be you still want to be the project director or the project manager, because at the end of the day, you want to have some final version of control or approval over what's being posted, because what's being posted doesn't represent the youth or the social marketing committee. It represents your organization. So you still want to be able to figure out how much time you're going to spend, how many check-ins you're going to have. But I think the pro completely outweighs the con. You're having somebody who probably has somewhat of an expertise or willing to have the time to learn how to do the website versus you having to figure it out yourself. And then also you give them, typically people like to be empowered. And you're saying I'm empowering you to be the voice and help us talk to people who are in your same circumstance. That's a great motivator. And so to me, like those pros far outweigh the cons, or cons singular.
And you caught me trying to figure out how to get back on. I think, Thomas, you were going to talk about best practices for a little while.
Absolutely. And just really want to get a couple of minutes, or really the rest of today. I saw a lot of the questions early in Johanna's portion talking about, how can we maybe use a Snapchat, or what are some different ways that we can use technology or texting. And so what I really want to be able to talk about is some best practices we also not only use as proof points in Massachusetts, but just ways that things that you should be able to use overall. And it doesn't matter if you have a staff of 1 or a staff of 10, a budget of $10,000 or a budget of $500,000. These are all tips and tricks that you should ideally be able to use no matter where your organization is in the process of social marketing. And so one of the key things I really want to talk to is about this whole idea of what is the best practice in marketing technology, or heck, what is marketing technology? And so if you think about what marketing technology is, if we have time, I would love it. Maybe 1 or 2 people just type in, what do they think marketing technology is? And a hint, it's not a trick.
Anybody have any comments? What's marketing technology?
Yep, I see some good examples, Lee. Yes. I think, Denise, I need to come and bring you over here so you can kind of do my job a couple of times. Like, that's exactly it. Marketing technology is simply how you use, I'm going to read word for word, use of technology to get messages out to intended audience or audiences. That's it. That's literally all. I don't care how many super complicated definitions you ever see. In a nutshell, that's all marketing technology is. And so for best practices, I want you all to be able to walk away with is a couple of tools that you can use from using technology to help get your message out to the youth a little bit better. Excuse me. So one of the ones, which for me is the biggest one, I don't care how stressful your job is, when you get to the social marketing or the communication aspect, that's the fun time of the day. Like so remember, as you're developing it, have fun with it. Like literally make that the most fun part of the entire program can be the marketing. So as you're developing it, remember that and have fun as you do it. The next thing I would do, and Glenn talked about, so I'll skip over it, is have a true, honest conversation with your team about resources, and not money resources, but time and personnel resources. Because one of the things I talk about, which is my next point, is think big. Think as big as possible, and then start to close down actual activity execution based off of that true time commitment and those 4 P's in that C. The next one, which we talk, and I'll get to this a little bit with Snapchat, is don't sell. We're not a consumer company, so you don't have to sell your organization. Your job from a social marketing standpoint is to inform, give ideas, celebrate. If you remember nothing else to walk away from, let that be the #1 best practice. You're not selling your organization. So although you want to mention who you are and do it consistently and tell where to go for information, you're not really even getting paid from them. So your idea is really to focus your messaging more on the information and overall communication. The last thing, and this is my second walk away or second best practice, is do either a 2A or 2B. So 2A is ask them to do something. What's your call to action, what we call it? So whether you're doing a print ad, something social media-wise, you should ask them to do something. The ask is call in, check out your website, post a picture. You should always be asking them to do something. That 2B is you should always ask for something in return. If you have giveaways, if you have a free event, that's exactly what we're here to do, but you should also be requesting something from them. That could either be an email address or their social media handle or whatever method of communication. If you're going to be texting a lot, a cell phone number. But always ask them to do something as a call to action, and always ask for something in return. Those are probably say the 2 walk away are the 2 most important. The next thing I really want to talk about is really 3 items or keys to understand. And so we talked about the 4 P's and C's, so I'll skip over that one. The next one is really where I want to start focusing in on technology. So we've talked a lot about using texting, text-to-talk, but remember the first poll question that Johanna passed off to me was, what's the one item that's mostly shared on social media? And that was an infographic. And so we want to figure out how can we use technology to be more visual. And so what I want to be able to do, and I have a couple of questions about this, if you need some best practices around curation or content development, and then managing that on social media. So I'm going to give you 4, and I'll talk a little slower, Johanna, so you can maybe help them type this in the chat box. And we can also share this a little bit later as well. So we think about content marketing. Think about curation, think about measurement, but what are you sharing with people? So it's not just a text message, but is it a video? Actually, I brought a stat with me somewhere, but video, I believe, is most people are consuming information via video, right? Some form of video. How are you developing pictures or imagery? And so I want to give you a couple of items. The first one is called Google Alerts. So if nobody uses Google Alerts, you can set up to send you some daily, weekly, monthly, but you essentially tell Google what are the key words you're interested in, and they'll send you articles, your choice, locally, across the country, across the world, on that daily, weekly, monthly basis, and they're literally giving you content in your email box that you can now turn into messaging to share with your youth. The second one's called Google Trends. And the reason I love Google Trends is you can go in the same way, separate whether you're talking locally, keywords, etc. It'll tell you what people are talking about. And so as you're developing the messaging that you want to use in text messaging, in social media, in your print ads, what are they talking about? Are they just talking about behavioral health? Fine, but when you use Google Trends and you look up behavioral health, they'll tell you what other keywords are they using. Where are they looking for the information? Are they searching for it on YouTube? Are they searching for it through a Google? And so Google Trends becomes very important to help you find out what other things you should be talking about. There's another one I like called Canva. If you've never heard of Canva, Canva is essentially a tool, an online tool that's free that allows you to be a graphic designer. And so for those who have smaller budgets, or even if you have a larger budget but don't necessarily want to hire a graphic designer to make a flyer for your local community event or for your meeting next Wednesday, Canva, C-A-N-V-A, allows you to essentially be a graphic designer. They have templates. They give you an opportunity to use free pictures or stock photography, use your own imagery from the pictures that you've taken, several different kinds of fonts, but just a great tool for you to allow not only create documents to talk about upcoming events, but also as you're creating content, allows you to get into memes and some other items. But Canva is another item that I would use. The last one is called Haiku. It's just like it sounds, H-A-I-K-U. Now, Haiku does have a cost to it. It's about $10 a month. But the reason I like Haiku, and I typically recommend people to use it, is Haiku essentially gives you the ability to make professional PowerPoint presentations, and then it creates and finds imagery for you. And so we talk about being visual when we talk to the youth. If you frequently or even quarterly have to make presentations for the community, I recommend Haiku because it helps you make them more visual, and you can focus more on the idea versus trying to figure out how to fit a couple of words on a page and get people to actually pay attention. So I always recommend Haiku in terms of creating content for presentations to share with the community. Now let's go into actually managing social media. I heard, might have been Lee, somebody uses Hootsuite. I would recommend, if you have any interest at all in using social media, to start with Hootsuite. Hootsuite is free, and it allows you to use up to 3 social media platforms for free. So if you have Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, the only one that doesn't do is Snapchat, and I'll come to that in a second. But it allows you to do a couple of things. Number one, you can schedule. So if you know the only free time you have during the day is between 10 and 11 o'clock in the morning, well, you can schedule all your posts for the day, for the week. I wouldn't recommend going out past the week because the news changes so often that you don't want to send something that is old news or send something that people's conversation has changed. But you have the ability to schedule out using Hootsuite. The other one is if you, for example, have some great content on Twitter. Well, you can post not only on Twitter, but you can also post on your Instagram page, on your LinkedIn page, on your Facebook or Google Plus page. You can do all that with the same quote or a piece of content. Yeah, the third reason that I like Hootsuite is it's really good when it comes to sharing imagery across platforms. And so as you're developing content using some of the other pieces that I mentioned before, you can use Hootsuite to share that across. Now, one, if you have a little bit of funding and don't have the time, or you really want to get more involved, I would recommend using Mentia. That's M-E-N-T-I-A. I believe the website is getmentia.com. Mentia is free, but typically the reason I recommend Mentia is, and it does a lot of the same things that Hootsuite does, but it does one thing that Hootsuite doesn't. It allows you, if you have a post, really two things. It allows you to see how your posts perform. And Hootsuite doesn't really do that. And it can make recommendations on which ones you should use more often. But also, if you find one that performed very well, you can archive it and use it again. It's a little more involved in Hootsuite, where Hootsuite is very self-explanatory. You can hop right on and start using today. But Mentia allows you to do those other two things. Now, if you have a little, again, that's free. But if you have funding, it's literally $6,000 a year, and they will manage your social media for you. So, yeah, if you have the time, you have the content, you enjoy creating content, I would recommend using either one of those free services, Hootsuite or Mentia. But if you feel like you don't have the staff, the time, but you do have the $6,000 because you recognize that being on social media is mandatory, I would recommend using Mentia's paid service, and they'll do it for you every week for an entire year. The last, I want to kind of,
I'm back on, Thomas, although I did not get back on the video. We're down to the end of our time. We have mention one more thing, and then we have 5 minutes for discussion. And we're going to transition back to the slides.
Got it. So last thing I would say is that Snapchat, don't feel bad. Marketers haven't figured out how to use Snapchat because of the 24-hour time frame. But remember the thing that I said is that we're not selling. We're giving information. So as you're going out and using, taking pictures or reusing some apps to create or reuse other people's pictures, or just want to talk about an event because you're not selling anything, I would absolutely use Snapchat.
Thank you, Thomas.
Sure.
So as I said, we have, and I'm typing into you all, we have about 5 minutes for questions, ideas to share, and comments. Thank you, Johanna and Gary.
Definitely. And for those of you that have called in on the phone, we are able to unmute your line if you'd like to use your phone to ask a question. And for those of you that are logged in just through your computer browser, you can go ahead and put your questions into the chat box. For questions or comments for Thomas or Glenn or myself, and we'd love to respond. Thomas, thanks so much for letting us know that it's okay that we haven't all figured out Snapchat.
Yeah. And Thomas, you can see what Peter had to tell us. Do you have comments on that?
So Peter, what's FOMO?
See, I was hoping you knew that, Thomas. That's why I threw that at you.
Fear of missing out.
Missing out. Okay.
Oh, got it. Okay.
I'm officially old.
And so, I would say absolutely. So that's where I believe we have an advantage over marketing is because we're giving, especially we start talking about one-time events or events the day of, so that whole idea of missing out. Because the Snapchat disappears so quickly, if you have a message that it doesn't matter that it's gone 24 hours from now, that's when Snapchat is the most. So what's his name? Mental Health Awareness Month. If you want to do 30 pieces of information every day about mental health awareness, Snapchat would be a great way to do that. Just remember, it's all video.
I'm going to interrupt for a second, Thomas.
Sure.
For our participants, we opened the phone line, so you need to mute your phone if you're in a busy office or having other conversations, and it sounded like somebody did. So thank you very much. Now we can hear you. Go ahead.
Definitely. Frank asked another really good question, and I think this gets to the specifics of the population of the audience that you're working with. So are there any particular social media or tools that are used differently by college students unlike other young adults of similar age? And Lee, thank you for chiming in that definitely school email addresses are one thing to consider. Thomas, do you have anything else that we should consider as we think specifically about college students?
Yeah, I would say that there's two. One is college students use, really young adults use them a lot, but college use them as well, is there is a whole idea behind messaging on gaming and music channels, particularly when you start talking about the LGBT community. And then the second one is a little risky, but it definitely works, is on college campuses, they are like dating apps like OkCupid, as well as, I'm married, so I don't know them all by heart, but I do know there's a couple of dating apps, and oftentimes college campuses will have their own version. They're literally licensing because there's so many college students on that particular app, and so being able to message on those also works as well, but that becomes a little borderline. Can you do that in your organization?
Thank you. Thomas.
All right, and folks are still typing. Go ahead and answer your questions in here. I'm going to switch us to the next slide just to talk briefly about the resources, but we have time for one more question if someone has one to type in. So all of the things that we've referenced on today's call are on this slide, and those hyperlinks should work for you, including the links to the Crisis Text Line TED Talks, as well as the data site, the Promoting Mobile Technologies document, and then the references that we used in the technology data earlier in today's presentation. For those of you that are particularly interested in social media management component to social marketing, there is a series being offered through the NITT TA Center, and the link to the first of that series, the recording, is on the bottom of this list. So definitely go ahead and check out these resources after today's call. And if you're interested in downloading the entire slide deck, that is available in the Files for Download pod in the lower right-hand corner of your screen. Thomas or Glenn, do you have a final sign-off note for either of us? And then I'll pass it to you, Glenn.
I don't think I have any final notes. Thomas, your last thing to say.
Have fun with your communications and your marketing. People can see if you're having fun or not.
Okay. Have fun with your social marketing and communications. So this is a slide with some of the social media things that are available through SAMHSA. Very good information that is put out. It's always worth following them on Twitter and seeing what they are posting on the SAMHSA websites in terms of information you may want to pass on to your stakeholders or will be of interest to you. And we want to remind you we are so excited that this is our third call, and we do want it to be a community of practice. And so we have 2 more webinars that will be coming up. They're every other month, so there will be one. Here they are. Thank you, Johanna. On July 11th and another one on September 12th. If you have any suggestions of topics around engagement, please let us know. And we do have a commitment that people will look at the homework, and when you are on the calls, be involved in the community. And we appreciate everyone who was so prolific in your typing and sending in questions to us and comments. That was very much appreciated. And certainly we're appreciative of your spending 90 minutes of your day with us. We all know that you have very, very busy day jobs. And unless Thomas has had his last word, Johanna, do you have a last word?
Just a really big thank you for everybody for joining. And if you're looking for a specific resource that we mentioned today, go ahead and post that in the chat, and I'll make sure that links get out.
And
thank you, everybody.
You can also be in touch with Johanna or myself. And a big thank you to Thomas for being our subject matter expert today. Bye, everybody.